I always forget how close this is to my face when I'm doing a read stream. I don't know why it's not sitting straight. Hopefully the music's okay. I kind of just turned something on. And yeah, I forgot to move the screen to the transition screen. Hi. Oh. What is happening? Am I having frame issues? That's what I'm wondering. Things sound good? Okay. So apologies for just screwing up my stream schedule. I'm just really not on a good sleep schedule and I keep screwing it up. So, but I'm here and I'll do a read stream until I have to go pick up Keegan, probably till like 5:15. So, we'll do it. And I don't know, so we're reading this and we're reading the original story. 30, 36, 38, 37. I know, well that's the thing, I have been sleeping, but not at the right times. So yeah, we're gonna do this. I just don't know what happened in the first 4 chapters that we've already read, because it's been so long. So I guess we're just gonna jump in and either hope that I remember or it'll just be self-explanatory. And I have no idea if the follower goal is correct, and hey, look, that thing is still up and that is not going on anymore. So that needs to go away. And I suppose I can move this up. It's never at the right place. My head hurts. But I'm probably really dehydrated, that's my guess. And so, just so you guys know, I will not be here next week. So, I probably won't have, oh my god. Probably won't have any streams going on unless I get to do some IRL streams, which is possible. but I don't know yet. I'm really OCD, and this is not. It's fine. It's fine! Every single freaking time. So I lost yet another follower. Probably because I never stream. Or people just hate me, whatever. So I have to update this again. That's right. The bar never updates. It only goes up, it doesn't go down. Hi Timo, welcome for being angsty at just the right moment because I said everybody hates me and then that happened. So, this is not the right thing. Widgets. Follower goal. End goal. 50, 147. Okay. Now it should be updated. And I should start the music back up. Oops. Wow. Well, we're gonna listen to a different thing, so hopefully it's good. Thank you for shouting out, Timo. Really? Really, Betty? This is what I get when I actually try to stream. Nothing works. There should not be there's not a cooldown on that, so I don't know what the crap's happening. Is chat even working right now? Is that what it is? Yeah, every time I stream, just nothing works. Okay. Did the bot die? Yes, I can see your message, your chat. I think the bot died for whatever reason. It says she's connected. There it is on the layout again. What happened? Oh, just one message I sent didn't appear on the layout. Weird. Yeah, and my commands aren't appearing either. I'm just gonna restart the chatbot. I don't know what's happening. My apologies for nothing ever working when I stream and then just being A consistently inconsistent streamer. Yup. Okay, and now it's not coming up. Okay, it's loading. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, how about now? Okay. I guess it needed to be restarted. Okay. Well. Anyways, let's without further ado, since I have like an hour, let's just get into the book. And let me know if anything else needs to be adjusted. Oh yeah, I forgot to check on my audio levels because you said my stream was just low in general in volume. Is that still, does it still sound pretty low in general? Also, is the music too high? I think I tried to turn everything up since you guys were saying it was a little low. Boo-boo. Come here. Come sit on the chair. Come on. No, not my chair. Your chair. I got you your own personal chair. Come on. Okay. Well, anyways, if you have any comments on the audio levels, please just let me know. Come on, boo-boo. Get up here. Boo. Okay. Chapter 5. The Woman of Mystery. Nancy and her chums spent the afternoon on the beach, enjoying a brisk swim and a sunbath. They talked no more of Miss Morse, assuming that they would never see her again, since she did not appear to live in Seacliff after all. As they entered their room sometime later, the girls were astonished to find that in their absence, an extra suitcase had been deposited just inside the door. "What's this?" Bess inquired as she noticed the bag. "All our luggage came up yesterday," George added. "Do you suppose this is your father's suitcase, Nancy?" "Oh no, he never owned one like that. Let's see the railroad tag." She stooped down to examine it. "Why, girls, this suitcase belongs to Fanny Morse." "Well, of all things!" exclaimed Bess. "How did it get here in our room?" "You tell me," Nancy responded dryly. "Obviously, there's been some mix-up in the luggage, and the hotel people thought this bag belonged to us. That would seem to indicate Miss Morse registered here. The clerk told us he never heard of the woman," George commented. "I know," Nancy Nancy nodded thoughtfully. It's rather baffling, isn't it? She went to the telephone and called the office below. The clerk in charge could not explain how the suitcase had been deposited in the girl's room, but assured Nancy a boy would be sent for it immediately. The girls chose to follow the bag down to the lobby. They examined the hotel register, but Miss Morse's name had not been listed as a recent arrival. The desk man was perplexed too, for he did not know what to do with the suitcase. In vain he questioned the bellboys. No one admitted taking the luggage to room 305, nor did anyone remember Miss Morse by either name or by the description which Nancy furnished. She's certainly a woman of mystery, George sighed as the girls decided to give up their quest. Yes, I see that. I saw that come through, V. But not anything else. Miss Morse must be somewhere here in Seacliff, Nancy declared soberly. Possibly in the hotel. I intend to watch for her. I don't remember who Miss Morse is. Deciding that Togo needed exercise, the girls took the dog for a long walk on the oceanfront. They passed many fine estates, the massive houses being half hidden behind tall iron fences and a natural screen of trees and shrubs. Nancy read the nameplates on several of the gates. I wish we could find Old Estate, she remarked. If I go back to River Heights without seeing the Whispering Girl, I'll be very disappointed. Mrs. Owen had provided Nancy with directions for reaching the estate, but they were too vague to be of value. Apparently, the clubwoman had become mixed concerning the names of various streets. At any rate, the girls were unable to locate many of them. Interpreting the directions as best they could, they came presently to a pine forest dotted with several tourist camps. Wrong again, Nancy sighed. Old Estate couldn't be this way. They asked the manager of the nearest camp if he knew of the place, but the man had never heard of it. Nancy and her chums went back to the hotel, feeling a trifle discouraged. I wish we had a car here, Nancy remarked regretfully. Then we could get around faster and see things. Since arriving at Seacliff, the girls had not enjoyed themselves to any great extent. The weather had been too cold for pleasant swimming, and the resort city was not as lively as they had expected to find it. The following day, when Mr. Drew returned, he noticed immediately that the girls appeared downcast. We like it here, Nancy insisted upon being questioned. But the most interesting things to see are miles from the city along the shore. Why not hire a cab and drive wherever you like? Her father questioned. We could do that, I suppose, Nancy said slowly. Only one always feels so rushed and money-conscious listening to the steady tick-tick, tick-tick of the taxi meter. Evidently, Mr. Drew gave some thought to the problem of transportation, for that evening, when the girls joined him in the hotel dining room, they found an elderly, bent old man chatting with the lawyer. The latter arose quickly, his companion more slowly, for the poor fellow seemed to be suffering from rheumatism. Girls, said Mr. Drew jovially, this is Mr. Harvey Trixler, the answer to your hopes. He owns an automobile and is diligently seeking a driver. Okay. It's this way, Mr. Trixler explained after Nancy and her chums had seated themselves to the table. I came to Seacliff to take the salt baths. For years I've suffered from rheumatism and an infection which seems to make me sore and ache in every joint. Each day I'm compelled to drive out to the Brighton Baths, which are 10 miles from the city. Now I don't like to rent a car myself, and the taxi drivers seem to take great delight in driving as fast as they can all over the bumps. As I was saying a moment ago, Mr. Drew interposed with a wink at Nancy, my daughter is an excellent driver. If I could help you in any way, I'd be delighted to do so, Nancy offered promptly. Before the meal ended, it was arranged that the girls should drive the old man daily to the Brighton Baths, where he usually spent the greater part of the morning. In return for the favor, they were to have the use of the car whenever they might choose. Oh, Dad, how did you happen to meet Mr. Trixler? Nancy asked her father when they were alone. I heard him inquiring at the desk for a driver. I remembered that you girls were pining for a car of your own, so I checked up on Trixler and found him to be all right, though perhaps a bit eccentric. He is a retired businessman. If you can avoid jolting him too much and driving over the bumps, you'll find the arrangement a pretty good one for all concerned. He seems to be a rather timid sort, Dad. I'm surprised he'd be willing to trust himself to my driving. Yes, I can see that. Does it seem like not all the messages are coming through? I told them you were very conservative, Mr. Drew laughed. I hinted that you never travel over 25 miles an hour. Nancy and her chums were glad to have an occupation and really enjoyed taking Mr. Trixler back and forth to the salt baths. Usually when the old man emerged from the building, he would be in a gay mood, his aches and pains temporarily having been soothed away. He liked to take the girls to moving picture shows and frequently treated them to refreshments. En route to the Brighton baths, it was a far different story. Then nothing seemed to please Mr. Trixler. Although Nancy drove as carefully as she could, he moaned at every bump and complained constantly. Usually the old gentleman spent at least 3 hours inside the building. While he was occupied with the treatment, the girls often drove farther along the highway, viewing the many imposing estates along the shore. Sometimes they would bring a picnic lunch and eat it either in the handsome touring car or at some rocky nook by the ocean. During their various excursions, Nancy did not forget to inquire about Miss Morse. No one, however, seemed ever to have heard of the old lady. One noontime, as the girls were sitting in the car waiting for Mr. Trixler, Nancy proposed that they take a walk into the pine woods directly behind the Brighton baths. Too lazy, Bess yawned. You and George go. I think I'll curl up in the back seat and snooze. Oh, let's stay here, George protested. I don't seem to have any pep today either. I'll go myself, Nancy laughed, opening the car door. Signal to me when Mr. Trixler comes. She walked away and turned into a trail which led through the pine woods. She had only gone a short distance when she saw that she was overtaking 2 men directly ahead of her. She would have thought nothing of it had she not heard the name Miss Morse spoken distinctly. Instantly alert, the girl slackened her pace and gazed intently at the 2 men. Their backs were to her, so she could not be certain whether the younger of the 2 was Joe Midza, though he resembled him. It is he, she decided a moment later, as the man turned his head slightly. I wonder if he followed Miss Morse here. Nancy felt that she must learn what the 2 were saying. She was willing to risk detection. Pulling her hat low over her eyes, she quietly drew closer. Well, I guess Twitch needs a good kick. I guess it's working. That's weird. I'm sorry. Who says hi? Except not really, because he's not looking. Oh, there's a boo-boo. Sleepy boo-boo? You looking at yourself? You see a pretty kitty? Anyways. Kitty hype. It's not your fault, Twitch just being difficult. True. Twitch does that a lot. That was her roar of dominance. Yeah. She's super dominant. Oh. Okay. Okay. Shall we continue? I do have to say this song is getting a little annoying. Oh, hey, speak of the devil. It's done. Yes, hello, boo. We're going to continue reading. Okay? She's like, no, Mom, pet me. Chapter 6. Joe Mitza's Plot. The two men presently sat down on a rustic bench which had been built along the trail. Nancy ducked back into the pine forest just in time to escape being seen. As she cautiously moved forward again to approach the bench from the rear, a stick crackled underfoot. Nancy halted, fearful that the sound might have betrayed her. She was relieved when the murmur of the men's voices went on uninterrupted. Nancy crept near enough to hear what the two were saying. Joe Mitza was speaking. Oh, I marked Miss Morse's easy money the first time I set eyes on her. It was lucky for me that dog pulled open her cape. The old lady was a regular walking bank. How much do you figure she's good for? The other man questioned. Oh, 5,000 easily. Now I'll let you in on the deal, Byrne, if you'll put in that amount. I'd swing it alone, only I haven't $1,000 to my name. How do I know I'll get my money back? The man addressed as Byrne asked gruffly. Haven't I always played square with you? Mitza demanded sharply. You have so far, the other admitted, but this old lady may not be such an easy mark as you think. Oh, she's stupid, Mitza replied contemptuously. We can't go wrong on the setup. I've already told her about a wonderful piece of oceanfront property with a thriving restaurant, which is supposed to cater to society people. I drove her out into the country, bought her a $3 dinner, and showed her the Mayfair. I told her it could be bought for $10,000, and she agreed the place would be a bargain at that. It would be too, Byrne observed dryly. You couldn't buy the Mayfair at any price, laughed Mitza, but Miss Morse was as innocent as a babe. I gave her the good old line that I'd never let her into the deal if I had $10,000 myself. Since the Mayfair people insisted upon getting all cash, I had to raise another $5,000. I suggested we buy the property in partnership. And she tumbled? Sure. It was like taking candy from a child. She said if I would put up $5,000, she'd give the other $5. The money is to be sealed into an envelope and given to a third party. And when the envelope is opened, Miss Morse will discover that her $5,000 has been replaced with fake money. That's right, Mitza nodded. The trick is an old one, but it will work on Miss Morse. You can't lose, Byrne, and I'll give you a good cut on the $5,000 I make. What do you say? The two men arose and walked on up the trail. Nancy waited several minutes before emerging from her hiding place. She was aghast at the plot to steal Miss Morse's money. For just an instant, she was tempted to pursue the two swindlers and confront them with the knowledge she had gleaned, but she hesitated. No, I would gain nothing that way, she reflected. Mitza would deny everything, and I'd not have a scrap of evidence with which to support my claim. It will be better for me to warn Miss Morse. How to find the missing old lady was a problem which perplexed Nancy. She knew that probably the woman was in Seacliff. Otherwise, Joe Mitza could not keep in touch with her. Yet, general inquiry had revealed no clue as to the old lady's whereabouts. Perhaps Dad can help me find her, Nancy thought. Turning around, she hurried back down the trail to rejoin her chums at the Brighton Baths. Upon coming within view of the automobile, she saw that Mr. Trixler was seated in the car, evidently having waited for several minutes. He was not in as good humor as usual, for due to the carelessness of a bath attendant, he had slipped on a cake of soap. Drat this place, he complained loudly to George and Bess. I come here to be helped, and they make me a lot worse. They take my money and try to cripple me for life. I've a mind to sue 'em, that's what. Nancy came hurrying up to the car, apologizing because she had kept the party waiting. It doesn't matter, Mr. Trixler answered, for he was fond of the girl and never spoke crossly to her, even when he was in an unpleasant mood. Nancy hurriedly started the car and drove slowly back towards Seacliff. At the Seaside Hotel, Mr. Trixler was deposited at the front door, while the Drew girl and her chums took the auto to the garage. I suppose we could go for a little ride, George suggested indifferently. We have the car to ourselves now. Nancy shook her head. I don't want to go anywhere until after I've had a chance to talk with Dad. Anything wrong? George inquired quickly. All during the ride from the Brighton baths, she had noticed that Nancy seemed strangely quiet and tense. Now, as they walked back to the hotel, the latter revealed everything she had overheard in the Pine Woods. "Why, Mitza should be turned over to the police," Bess exclaimed indignantly. "I've never heard of a more contemptible trick, stealing from an old lady." "Miss Morse must be found and warned," Nancy said soberly. "She told me to keep out of her affairs, but I feel I shouldn't, knowing what I do." "Joe Mitza is too clever for her," George replied. "If you prevent him from stealing the money, Miss Morse should be highly grateful, Nancy." "She should be, yes, but Miss Morse is a peculiar type. However, I'm not expecting any thanks. I merely don't want to see her cheated." The girls went into the hotel. As they crossed the lobby, the desk clerk signaled to Nancy. "I have a message for you," he declared, offering a sealed letter. "Why, this is in Dad's handwriting," Nancy murmured in surprise. She ripped open the envelope and quickly scanned the brief missive. "Oh, girls, this is disappointing. Dad has left Seacliff." "He hasn't gone back to River Heights, has he?" Bess inquired with concern, fearing that the end of their own vacation might be in sight. "No, he has been called away on business to an inland city not far from here, a place named Bardwell. He expects to be back in a day or two, but that may be too late." "What will you do, Nancy?" Bess asked. "I scarcely know what course to follow," the girl admitted, frowning. "I counted upon Dad's advice." "How about trying some of mine?" demanded a masculine voice. Nancy and her chums whirled about to see Mr. Trixler standing behind them, leaning on a cane. "Perhaps you can help us," Nancy said eagerly, for she felt she could trust the old gentleman. "But we can't talk here." Finding a deserted nook of the lobby, she then told the invalid about the urgent necessity for locating Miss Morse. "There's only one thing to do, of course," the old gentleman said promptly when he learned of Joe Mitza's scheme to defraud the woman. "The police should be notified." "I suppose it would be wise," Nancy admitted thoughtfully, "but I wonder if my testimony will be sufficient to hold Mitza and that man named Byrne." "It ought to be. Anyway, if Mitza should be questioned by the police, he'd be afraid to go on with his scheme, even if he were released." "That's true," Nancy agreed. "I'll go talk to the police myself," Mr. Trixler offered chivalrously. "Just leave everything to me. This is a man's affair, anyway," he added with a laugh, "and I'm feeling well enough for a little exercise." After Nancy had permitted the old man to go alone to the station house, she began to regret that she had not accompanied him. "I'm afraid he'll not be able to make the story sound convincing," she said to her chums. Mr. Trixler was gone more than an hour. When he returned, the girls could tell by the expression of his face that the mission had not been a satisfactory one. "Drat that stupid chief of police," he complained angrily. "Not an ounce of brains in his thick skull." "Didn't he believe the story?" Nancy asked quickly. "I don't know what he thought," Mr. Trixler growled. "He just sat there and looked at me and didn't say much except that no one by the name of Fanny Morse ever lived in Seacliff." "Whichever way we turn, we always run into that peculiar fact," Nancy replied slowly. "She must live here. Didn't the police even promise to question Mitza?" "They said they'd look him up, but I doubt if they'll exert themselves that much." It was clear to Nancy that the police had taken Mr. Trixler to be an obsessed old fellow, and thus had discredited his story. She considered making a trip to the police headquarters herself, but concluded that probably it would do no good. "Apparently, the only thing for us to do is to find Miss Morse ourselves," she said, thinking aloud. "I intend to talk to the police again," Mr. Trixler fumed. "I'll make 'em do something." More than ever did Nancy wish that her father were there. While Mr. Trixler meant well, she did not believe that he would be of great aid in locating Miss Morse or in accomplishing the arrest of Mitza and his companion. Later in the afternoon, when the girls went to the bathing beach for a swim, she became very quiet. "Oh, why not forget Miss Morse?" Bess urged her chum. "You've done everything you can." "She wasn't a bit nice to you on the train," George added. "You'll ruin the entire vacation worrying about her." Nancy laughed good-naturedly, and after that dutifully made a special effort to be gay. She raced her chums to the float, winning out by several strokes. After resting a while, the girls swam back to shore and buried themselves in the warm sand. "Let's rent a rowboat," George proposed suddenly. "We can get one for 25 cents an hour." "It will be hard to row in the high waves," Nancy remarked, turning to stare at the sea. However, George and Bess were so eager for the little adventure that she offered no serious objection. The boatman appeared a trifle hesitant about renting them a craft. "Are you all good swimmers?" he inquired dubiously. "Oh yes," Bess laughed. "Haven't you ever heard about our swimming the English Channel?" "No," the man responded dryly, "but I've fished out plenty of persons who drowned because they were too confident. The water is treacherous." "Well, be careful," Bess promised, growing grave. "Watch out for the turn of the tide," the man warned again as he helped the girls launch the boat. As they rowed away, they saw him watching them anxiously. Then, apparently satisfied that they knew how to handle the oars, he turned away. "This isn't as much fun as I thought it would be," George presently complained as she tugged at the oars. "More like plain hard work." The water was so rough that the boat rocked unpleasantly, and George had difficulty in steering it where she wished. They rode the crest of a wave, then plunged down into a trough. "I think we ought to go back," Nancy said anxiously, gazing toward the beach some distance away. "The lifeguards are making all the swimmers leave the water." "The water is getting rougher," Bess added. "I shouldn't be surprised if a storm were brewing." "Oh, I'm ready to turn back," George said, swerving the boat by pulling on her right oar. "I've had enough." Nancy's alert eyes were sweeping the dark water. A short distance away there was a lone swimmer who evidently had been too far from the beach to hear the whistle of the lifeguards. "Why doesn't that fellow turn back?" he murmured anxiously. "He may be carried out to sea." "Perhaps we ought to warn him," George replied, and at Nancy's quick nod she steered toward the young man. "Look!" cried Bess an instant later. Her gaze was riveted upon a great wall of water which was traveling swiftly toward them. Before the girls could shout a warning to the swimmer, the huge wave struck the boat and raised it high. Then the craft plunged down into a trough. Nancy glanced anxiously about for the young man. She could not see him anywhere. "He's gone down!" she gasped in panic. "No, there he is!" George shouted excitedly. "He's caught in the undertow!" Following George's frightened gaze, Nancy and Bess saw the swimmer battle frantically and then suddenly give up. They feared that he would sink before they would be able to reach him. "The man is weakening," Nancy observed. "Give the oars everything you have, George." $5,000 worth kidnapping, obviously. I had a great 2-hour nap, but I'm not completely awake yet. Yeah. I slept a lot, and I'm just feeling kind of draggy. What? What is it, Boo? She's meowing at me. So I need something to put in my stomach, so I'm gonna be right back very quickly. So please hold, I will be back. get brownie prickle. Don't mind me crunching away. Well, maybe it's just 150. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. It was being weird. Okay. Let us continue. Chapter 7. Old Estate. What are you doing on the edge, boo-boo? Before the boat could reach the swimmer, he went under. Nancy stood poised, ready to dive into the turbulent water after him if necessary. He reappeared at the surface again, but seemed unable to help himself. "Don't give up," she shouted encouragingly, then added to her chums, "He has a cramp, I guess." What? George finally brought the boat alongside so that the other girls could grasp the young man by his bathing suit. They tried to pull him aboard, but it was difficult to do so. Nancy was afraid that in such rough water the boat would upset if it became even slightly overbalanced. "Can you hold on to the side for a few minutes?" she asked the swimmer. "We'll tow you ashore." Exhausted as he was, the dark-haired youth was still able to flash Nancy a courageous grin. While she and Bess held fast to the young man, George rowed as rapidly as she could toward shore. When they reached shallow water, several lifeguards came wading out to assist. "I'm all right now," the rescued swimmer chattered in protest. "Just give me something warm to drink." "You're lucky you didn't drown," the lifeguard growled. "What was the idea, not coming in when I gave the signal?" "Didn't hear you," the young man returned, slipping into a bathrobe which was held for him. "Then I got a cramp, and in the undertow I couldn't do a thing for myself." "Say, where are those girls who hauled me in? I want to talk to them." Nancy, Bess, and George were standing at the edge of the crowd which had gathered. They felt a trifle embarrassed, for everyone seemed to be staring at them and pointing them out as heroines. They were glad that the young man did not appear to have suffered any ill effects from his unpleasant experience. When he attempted to express his appreciation, they tried to pass the matter off lightly. "My name is Jack Kingdon," he told them, and his smile was most attractive. "I'm so cold I can't talk without my teeth rattling together just now, but you'll hear from me again." The girls thought no more about the remark, for they had not even told the young man their names. A few minutes later, as they were leaving the beach after changing their clothes, a well-dressed woman of early middle age approached them. "Aren't you the girls who rescued my son?" she inquired with a smile. "I am Mrs. Kingdon." When Nancy and her chums admitted that they were, the woman thanked them profusely. She concluded by saying cordially, "I should be delighted to have you take luncheon with me tomorrow at my cottage. Jack is so eager to know you better." The girls were overjoyed to receive the invitation and promptly accepted it. The following afternoon found them rapping on the door of a picturesque cottage by the ocean. Mrs. Kingdon admitted them herself before the maid could answer the summons. "Luncheon will be served soon," she smiled after she had taken their wraps and made them welcome. "Until then, you might enjoy wandering about the garden with Jack." Mrs. Kingdon's son, immaculately dressed, was even more handsome and charming than the girls had thought him. He was a perfect host, escorting them through the old-fashioned flower garden and telling them many things of interest concerning Seacliff. "Have you lived here all your life?" Bess inquired. "Okay, bye." "Oh, no, but Mother and I usually spend our summers at Seacliff. We've been coming here to this same cottage off and on for 8 years, ever since I was a little boy." "Do you happen to know anyone named Fanny Morse living here?" Nancy inquired quickly. Jack Kingdon repeated the name and shook his head. "I can't seem to find anyone who has ever heard of her," Nancy sighed. "Or, for that matter, of the Whispering Girl statue." "The Whispering Girl?" Jack repeated in surprise. "Why, I know about that. I've seen it." "Tell me where it's located," Nancy pleaded eagerly. "Why, not far from here, on the old Conjure estate. Old estate, some persons call it, though usually it goes under the other name. The property is abandoned now and is rapidly falling into decay." "I'd give anything to see the statue," Nancy told him. "I've been told that I bear a slight resemblance to the marble figure." Jack stared at her face. "Why, so you do. It's uncanny. I say, after lunch, let's drive over to the old estate and you can see the statue yourself." Nancy and her chum said that they could think of nothing they would like better. During luncheon, Mrs. Kingdon was able to tell the girls additional facts about the abandoned property. "The place originally belonged to a wealthy man named Conjure, I believe," she explained. "He was respected in the community, but unfortunately he had a daughter who was rather wild. She ran away from home when she was very young and married a worthless fellow. I don't recall that I ever heard his name. At any rate, the man turned out to be a criminal, leading the girl into evil ways. She was arrested once for theft, but Mr. Conjure fixed matters up somehow. Yet, according to rumor, it cost him a great deal." "I should have thought he would have preferred to disown his daughter," Bess remarked. "Mr. Conjure was devoted to the girl. Whenever she was in trouble, she appealed to him for help, and he never failed her. In the end, it cost him his health, home, and happiness. He allowed old estate to fall into ruin because he could not afford to repair it or build a retaining wall to keep the sea from washing away the property. No one has lived at the place for years," Jack added. "Not since Mr. Conjure died. Every winter the water has been cutting deeper and deeper into the land, and any day I expect to hear that the house is toppled into the sea. It will probably go the first time we have a severe storm," Mrs. Kingdon declared. "A pity, too, for years ago the place was one of the most attractive at Seacliff." Soon after luncheon, as he had promised, Jack drove the girls to Old Estate. An ancient gate still barred the entrance to the winding private road which led to the house. As the young man pulled it open so that they might drive through, a loose board fell to the ground, making it impossible to close the barrier again. The road was dry but ruddy, and a wild jungle of shrubs brushed against the car as it passed. "Whatever became of Mr. Conjure's daughter?" George inquired, curiously, as the auto bounced along. Jack shrugged. "No one ever knew. After her last trouble with the police, she disappeared and was never heard of again. She did not return home, even for her father's funeral." "That was gratitude," Bess murmured, especially when the old man sacrificed his entire fortune for her." The automobile rounded a bend and halted before a weather-beaten, rambling old house which was perched high above the sea. It stood at a rakish angle, since one wing had no form of support at all. The water had cut a great tunnel beneath it. "Another season and the house surely will topple into the sea," Jack declared, gazing about him with interest. "A lot of damage has been done since last I visited here." Toward the right lay what remained of a garden. There were a few scraggly rose bushes entangled among a jungle of weeds. Yet when the visitors came within view of the Whispering Girl statue, they halted and stared in awe, for the figure tended to dignify its unkempt surroundings. The marble piece was still imposing, though weather-beaten and old. The group consisted of 3 sculpted figures, a life-size likeness of a beautiful girl with flowing hair, on either side of which, at a little distance, stood a smaller statue. The central figure bore a startling resemblance to Nancy. "Why, Mrs. Owen was right," Bess murmured when she found her voice. You're enough like that statue, Nancy, to be its twin. It makes me feel sort of creepy to see myself reflected in marble, her chum admitted as the young people moved forward to inspect the piece at close range. Jack had brought his camera and now took several snapshots of Nancy standing beside the whispering girl. He promised that he would send prints of the pictures to her when they should be developed. Do you know the history of the statue, Jack? Nancy inquired curiously. Only in a general way. The marble was imported from Italy, I've been told, and is of the best quality. I've never heard who the sculptor was. I suppose the statue received its name from the peculiar pose of the central figure, Nancy said musingly. Undoubtedly, agreed Jack. I'm sure the marble never talks. Listen, Nancy commanded suddenly. Everyone remained quiet for a moment. Save for the whistle of the wind in the pine boughs, and the roar of the ocean, there was no other sound. One can almost imagine that the statue is whispering now, Nancy murmured. It's only the wind, George Fane said impatiently. Of course, Nancy returned quickly, and I hope you won't think me superstitious, but I find the illusion almost perfect. I imagine if one were here on a stormy night, the old statue would practically howl, Bess laughed. I doubt if it will be here much longer, Nancy said regretfully. It stands so close to the bank that when the house goes, it may sink out of sight. What a pity. I think I'll go around to the ocean side of the building, said Jack Kingdon, and take some more pictures. You're not in a hurry, are you? Excuse me. No, replied Nancy. We'll wait here. Take as much time as you like. The truth is that the girl was so fascinated by the statue that she was not ready to leave the spot yet. A few minutes after the young man had disappeared from view, the attention of Nancy and her chums was diverted by the sound of screeching brakes. A large truck had come to an abrupt stop in the driveway. A swarthy, heavy-set foreigner climbed from the cab, approaching the group with quick, hurried steps. You own the place? He questioned Nancy, his manner eager and impatient. No, I do not, the girl replied emphatically. Ignoring her denial and speaking rapidly, the man told Nancy that he was a contractor. He would like the job of wrecking the old mansion and disposing of the marble statues. I can't give you permission to dismantle the place, Nancy said firmly. I do a good work, he insisted. I no cheat, I honest man. When I make it a promise, my word find. I'm not doubting your integrity at all, Nancy replied, somewhat amused at the man's insistence. I don't own the place, so I couldn't possibly give the job to you. It was evident that the contractor thought Nancy was merely endeavoring to drive a hard bargain. Despite the girl's repeated denials, he could not believe that she was not the owner of the property, for the statue resembled her. I give $500, you get no better price. Nancy wearily shook her head. You shake it ahead, but I make what you say. Deduction, yes? The statue is made for you. Your lips, your cheeks, your mouth, it is the same. The statue may look a little like me, but that doesn't mean the estate is mine. The man was still not satisfied, but he was diverted from further questioning by the sudden appearance of his pet monkey, which had escaped from its tether in the truck. Instead of seeking its master, however, the little animal espied the tall porch pillars of the ancient house. With astonishing agility, he shot up one of them and squatted down near a window on the roof. His master grew very excited. He scolded the monkey in broken English, and then tried his native tongue, but the little fellow did not choose to understand. Instead, Jocko cowered by the window and looked up the side of the house, seeking further elevations to scale. Oh. Okay. Just started a new thing and it's Ghibli stuff. Suddenly, the man seized a rock and hurled it at his escaped pet. The missile flew wide of its mark and crashed through the window, glass flying in all directions. Suddenly, the monkey vanished. Oh, he crawled through the window, cried George. The girl went off into a gale of laughter as she watched the angry contractor shake his fist at the vanished pet. I get you, he shrieked. And when I do, Jocko, of you I make a dahash. Okay. sorry, V-Mom called and now I'm gonna go pick up some dinner. I'll be right back. Okay. I'm sure you're gone, but yes, be safe. And hello, Riddy, welcome. Thank you for clapping early. Yeah, I still need to make my own page sip emote. I'm drinking Kool-Aid. I haven't had Kool-Aid in a long time. Okay. Let's continue. Chapter 8. Locating Miss Morse. The contractor ran around the house, searching for some means of entrance, but found all the doors and windows locked. As the man could not scale the porch column as Jocko had done, he muttered impatiently to himself, and then sat down to wait until the monkey should reappear. Nancy and her chums wished to help the man recover his pet, but without a ladder there was nothing they could do. Bess wandered about the outside of the house, trying the windows herself to make certain the fellow had not overlooked any of them. Toward the rear she found one where a shutter had been left open. "Take a look inside, girls," she invited. "Some of the furniture is still in the house." "Imagine that!" Bess exclaimed. "After all these years!" "I wonder why it was never taken away," Nancy mused as she joined her chums at the window. Peering into the darkened interior, the girls made out several massive pieces of furniture draped with ghostly sheets and protecting covers. A grand piano stood at the far end of the room, into which they gazed. Suddenly Nancy and her chums were startled to hear the roar of the Italian's truck. They ran to the road. "I go now," the man shouted above the noise of the motor. "I gotta no time to wait for Jocko." Before anyone could protest, the contractor had driven away. "What will become of the poor little monkey?" Nancy worried. "He'll starve if he's left in that house." Jack Kingdon appeared at this moment and was told what had happened. "The contractor will probably come back later for his pet," he assured the girls. The young people waited for nearly half an hour, hoping that the animal would reappear at the window. Finally, since it was growing late, they were compelled to leave the estate. Jack drove the girls to their hotel. As he left them, he extended a cordial invitation for them to visit the Kingdon cottage again. Nancy hoped that during her absence, Mr. Trixler might have gained some information regarding Miss Morse's whereabouts, but she was disappointed to learn that such was not the case. Mr. Drew had not returned from his out-of-town business trip either. Excuse me. As the girls went to their room to change their clothes, Nancy remarked anxiously, "I wish we hadn't gone away and left Jocko at Old Estate." "There was nothing we could do," George replied. "It was impossible to get into the house without smashing a window." "I'd not enjoy prowling about that creepy place anyhow," added Bess. "It was all right going there with Jack, but I shouldn't want to try it alone." Nancy said nothing. Half an hour later, while her chums were occupied with letter writing, she quietly left the hotel. Making use of Mr. Trixler's car, she sought the home of the contractor, finding it after considerable delay and inquiry. The man was not at home, however, and his wife spoke very little English. She was able, fortunately, to make Nancy understand that Jocko had not been recovered from the old deserted house. I'm going back there alone and see if I can find him, the Drew girl decided, as she drove toward the country. I'll never have a peaceful moment until I do. En route to Old Estate, she stopped at a roadside stand to purchase a bag of peanuts. Thus fortified to entice the monkey, she took up her position not far from the whispering statue. There was no sign of the little animal anywhere about the premises. Jocko! Jocko! Nancy called in wheedling tones. She scarcely expected that the pet would heed her cries. Great was her surprise when she spied him looking down at her from the attic window ledge. Over and over, Nancy pleaded with the little fellow to come down. He eyed her intently, but would not obey. Deciding that the monkey was afraid of her because she was a stranger, Nancy moved back behind the marble statue, leaving a trail of peanuts in her wake. Half hidden from view, she then called Jocko in whispered tones. At first, the little animal remained indifferent to her calls. "Hi, Boo." But when she was upon the verge of giving up, he suddenly swung down the porch pillar and began to gather up the peanuts. Closer and closer he came to Nancy until she was able to reach out and grab him. Jocko squirmed in her grasp, but as soon as he discovered there were more peanuts to be had, he slipped a paw about the girl's neck and was content to be carried away. As Nancy hurried with the monkey to the car, a taxi cab came up the driveway. She was dumbfounded to see Bess, George, and Mr. Trixler alight. "I thought we'd find you here," George declared as they came toward Nancy. "Bess and I were almost certain you'd come back looking for that monkey." "I was just about to take Jocko home," Nancy explained unnecessarily. For a moment, she wondered if Mr. Trixler were provoked at her for using his car, yet she knew that such hardly could be the case, for he had urged her many times to take it whenever she wished to do so. "We have interesting news for you," Bess declared, her eyes bright with excitement. "Mr. Trixler has located Miss Morse." "Oh, where is she?" Nancy cried in delight. "The police tell me she's staying at a tourist camp out this way," Mr. Trixler explained. "It's called the Sunset Camp. The hotel people gave us the suitcase she left in our room," Bess went on. "We thought we'd take it to her, but we didn't want to go without you." Nancy was grateful that Mr. Trixler and the girls had gone to so much trouble to find her. Lost my place. For she would have been bitterly disappointed had they made the trip without her. They dismissed the taxi, and everyone rode in Mr. Trixler's car to the Sunset Tourist Camp, located only a few miles farther on. Driving up to the little office at the entrance of the park, Nancy explained to the man in charge that they wished to see a camper by the name of Miss Morse. "Cottage 16, he directed gruffly. She drove through the gateway, parking in front of a two-room overnight cabin. "I scarcely know how I'll be received," Nancy whispered to her chums. Leaving the active Jocko in George's care, she took out Miss Morse's suitcase. Setting it down by the cottage door, she rapped lightly. It was opened almost at once by a middle-aged woman wearing a pink house dress. As Nancy gazed fixedly at her, the girl did not notice a small boy who emerged from an adjoining cabin and stared curiously at the bag. He sidled nearby and began to examine the suitcase. "I was told that Miss Morse resides in this cottage," said Nancy to the woman. "I am Miss Morse." Nancy could not hide her disappointment. She had expected to meet the old lady of the black cloak, but obviously there were two persons in Seacliff by the same name. She explained about the bag having been left by mistake in her room at the Seaside Hotel. "I've lost no luggage," the woman replied, glancing at the suitcase. "I never owned one like that either." Unnoticed by Nancy, the small boy had been tampering with the fastenings of the case. At a sharp word from Miss Morse, he scuttled away. "That child next door is a dreadful pest," the woman apologized. "Always prying into things." Nancy laughed good-naturedly and reached down to pick up the bag. As she lifted it, the lid fell back. A small black box, which appeared to be a makeup kit, tumbled to the ground, and with it, a woman's blonde wig. The clothing which lay exposed was of the latest style and of a type usually worn by young women. "Well, mercy sakes!" Miss Morse murmured in astonishment. I guess the owner of that bag must be an actress. Enjoy the Kool-Aid and the lurk. Boo being silly. Okay, I have about 15 minutes. So, I will continue. Oh, you know what? So, just so you guys know, I do have a stream scheduled for tomorrow, but it could possibly be late. I have physical therapy in the afternoon, like right after work, but hopefully I'll be home by 3, we'll see. So we'll just kind of play it by ear. Okay, Chapter 9, at the carnival. Nancy hastily replaced the wig and makeup kit in the bag and closed down the lid. To the comment of the woman that the owner of the suitcase must be an actress, she was tempted to add, either that or else a person traveling in disguise. We made a trip all for nothing, Bess murmured as her chum climbed in and took her place at the steering wheel. What was it that fell from the bag, Nancy? You snatched it up so quickly that we couldn't see what it was. A wig and a makeup kit. Hi. As soon as we're out of the park, I hope to get a better look at them because I can't understand why Miss Morse would carry such articles. Once she was out on the main road, Nancy drew up under a tree. She reopened the suitcase and showed Mr. Trixler and her chums the strange contents. Although the girls felt confident that the bag belonged to the mysterious woman of the black cape, they could find no papers or evidence to identify it as hers save the tag on the outside of the case. All markings had been removed from the clothing. What do you make of it, Nancy? George inquired in a baffled tone. The only way I can figure it out is that Miss Morse sometimes travels in disguise, but just why should she do such a thing? I confess it's too deep a mystery for me. I never heard you say such a thing before, Bess teased. I'll warrant you'll have the answer to the riddle before we leave Seacliff. How can I when Dad is due to return any minute now? Probably will start for home soon after he comes. If I could only locate Miss Morse, I'd have a definite place to begin, but as it is, I'm baffled. Probably Mitza has the $5,000 by this time anyway, George remarked. I doubt it, George, said Nancy, shaking her head. Miss Morse isn't as stupid as Mitza assumed. Now that I've seen the contents of the suitcase, I'm wondering if perhaps she won't prove a match for him. Well, if we can't find the woman, we just can't, Mr. Trixler next said philosophically. At least we have the satisfaction of knowing we tried to expose a trickster. As far as Nancy was concerned, to have tried and failed was no satisfaction at all. She resolved that she would never give up the search for Miss Morse until the hour she stepped on the train to return home. En route back to the hotel, the girls left Jocko at the house of his master. They received the gratitude of the contractor's entire family, which was considerable in number. They were glad to be relieved of the pet, for his mischievous inclinations were not unlike those of Togo. At the hotel, the girls found a note left by Jack Kingdon requesting them to attend a carnival that evening. They lost no time telephoning to say that they would be delighted to accept the invitation. Soon after dinner, the young people arrived at the scene of the street fair, mingling with the gay crowd which wandered from one concession to another. Jack bought popcorn and candy for the girls and encouraged them to try their luck at various games of chance. His supply of nickels and dimes seemed inexhaustible. You've been spending all your money on us, Nancy protested finally. Why not try some of the games yourself? Perhaps I will, Jack smiled. We're coming to the shooting gallery, and it's always hard for me to pass by one of those. They paused to watch the moving row of targets, and Jack stepped forward to pick up one of the rifles. Not until then did the girls notice a man who was firing at some clay ducks, his back toward them. Nancy was the first to recognize him. Joe Mitza, she whispered. It is, Bess agreed excitedly. Will you try to have him arrested, Nancy? I'm afraid I haven't enough evidence to hold him, Bess, but I intend to ask him where I can find Miss Morse." She waited until the man laid the rifle down on the counter. Then, as he was turning away from the gallery, she stepped forward. As she spoke, Mitza stared at her sharply. For an instant, his expression was blank. Then a hard, cunning look in his eyes told Nancy that he recognized her. "How do you do?" "How do you do?" she began with a pretense of politeness. "I'm very eager to find a certain Miss Morse." "I never heard of her," the man interrupted harshly. "The old lady in the black cape. You were so friendly with her on the train that I thought you might know her address here in Seacliff." "Well, I don't." "Her suitcase was delivered to me by mistake," Nancy continued, "and that's why I wish to reach her." At mention of the bag, a flicker of interest came into Mitza's crafty eyes, but in an instant it was gone. "Sorry, but I can't help you," he answered shortly, turning away. As Mitza mingled with the crowd again, Nancy gripped Jack Kingdon by the arm. "Do you mind leaving the carnival?" she requested. "I must find out where that fellow is staying here in Seacliff." "Then we'll follow him," Jack declared promptly. It was not difficult to keep Mitza in sight, for he walked slowly, pausing at various concessions. Hovering always in the background, Nancy and her chums noted that the man lost money heavily. Presently, he left the carnival grounds. The young people trailed him to a cheap boarding house on a squalid street by the railroad tracks. By interviewing the landlady, they learned that for several days past, Mitza had been rooming with a friend. Nancy carefully noted the address. Then, since it was too late to go back to the carnival, the four returned to the hotel. Nancy was delighted to find that during their absence her father had arrived. "You look very tired, Dad," she observed after he had kissed her fondly. "Have a good trip?" "Just fair. I'm glad to be back. Oh yes, I brought you a little present." "You needn't have done that, Dad." "This is really from my client," her father smiled. "Perhaps you won't care for it." He unwrapped a small package, holding up several yards of rich brocade in a curious and unusual flowered pattern. "Why, it's gorgeous, Dad," Nancy cried in admiration. "I don't know what you'll ever be able to do with it." "Leave that to me," the girl laughed. "I can think of several uses for such beautiful material." Then and there she determined to make her father a necktie as a surprise, but she gave no hint as to what was in her mind. Instead she asked, "Where did you get the cloth, Dad?" "Why, from my client, Mr. Owen. It came from the firm's warehouse." "I didn't know you had gone out of town to see Mr. Owen," Nancy remarked with interest. "It's a badly muddled case," Mr. Drew remarked, half to himself. Then, as was frequently his custom, he began to discuss the details aloud. "You see, some years ago, Charles Owen entered into a partnership with a man by the name of Frank Warmrath. The two men never got along very well together, and Owen began to distrust his partner. One night, the firm's warehouse was broken into, and valuable stock consisting of silk and woolen goods was stolen. The thefts never were traced. Soon after that, Wormrath broke up the partnership. What puzzled Owen was that although the profits of the firm had never been large, Wormrath suddenly seemed well supplied with money and a fine stock of goods with which to start another company in competition. Did Mr. Owen connect it with the warehouse theft? Nancy speculated shrewdly. Yes, he became convinced that his partner had instigated the thefts in order to gain a valuable share of the stock of goods, more than he would have been entitled to when a split-up might come. "And how do you figure in the case, Dad?" Nancy questioned. Were you engaged to uncover damaging evidence against Wormrath?" "Yes, I've gone through hundreds of documents with just fair success. I've gleaned a little information, but the fellow was shrewd. He evidently confined his dishonest activities to this one big theft." "Will you go back to see Mr. Owen?" "I may return to Wyndham in a few days," Mr. Drew answered. "Although I can't see just what good I can do. There's nothing more I can glean from the records of the firm. But don't look so worried, Nancy. This is my case, not yours, so you're not to lose any sleep over it." "I never lose sleep over any case," Nancy laughed. "But I'm worried about you. Dad, you look positively worn out." "I look the way I feel, but I'll be all right soon. I've just been grinding a bit too hard." "What you need, Dad, is a good brisk swim." "Not at this time of night." "It'll do you good and make you sleep better," Nancy urged. The moon is full too, and the beach will be beautiful. I'll go with you. Oh, all right, Carson Drew agreed unwillingly. However, after a 10-minute dip in the bracing sea, he was glad he had listened to his daughter's plea, for he felt alive in every part of his lean body. He raced Nancy back to the dressing room. And now to bed and to sleep, he declared a few minutes later, kissing her goodnight. Bess and George already were in bed. Nancy tiptoed across the room, and without disturbing them, she began to take off her shoes. She was startled to hear a soft knock on the door. "Who is it?" she asked, slipping her shoes back on again. She felt reassured when she heard her father's voice. He asked her to step out into the hall for a minute, and she obeyed immediately. "What is it, Dad? You look upset." "Come into my room so we'll not be heard," he urged in a whisper. She followed her father, who closed the door behind them. "Nancy, you didn't pick up my briefcase just before we went for our swim, did you?" "I know. I think I saw you drop it on your dresser." Nancy's eyes wandered to the bureau, which now bore only a few toilet articles. "I was afraid of it," Mr. Drew murmured in agitation. "While we were away, someone stole the case, and it contained valuable private papers." Okay, that's the end of chapter 9. And I have to leave it there because I need to go get Keegan from work. Had an update on the local fire. Apparently one of the buildings was a group home that lost some clothing, medication, and medical equipment. Wow. That's scary. But anyways, thank you all for being here. I do need to head out. But stay posted tomorrow. I will stream and continue to read tomorrow once I get back from physical therapy. So, I hope you guys have a great evening, and I will plan on seeing you tomorrow.